Right, I have a 27-minute video that I made to Heisel a day last night, but I'm going to make this video and just quick upload it. It'll be up first. Okay, I'm going to talk to you, Heisel, a day, and then in third person about you, because you are both a person in your own right and an experience, a conversational experience from my point of view. So in the first person, okay, look, I apologize for, more or less calling you stupid, but I didn't say that, but that's more or less how it adds up. You're not so good at abstractions and stuff. I don't want to maintain that. There's a grain of truth. When I give insults, I try to give insults always that are in line with my basic position. They might be hyperbolic. But basically, I'm just insulting you with that because you are insulting me, calling me a charlatan, basically, which I think is totally unfair because I don't have some product that I'm pimping, or when people do agree with my stuff, I don't coddle them. I'm just as likely to go, no, I disagree with you as I am with you. When you aren't insulting me, calling me a charlatan, I have just taken you at face value and given you face value information. So I don't think that that's fair. I think it's similar to someone like Gary thinking, oh, Piro's one of those phantasmagoricals, but it's different. You're maligning my character, so I'm insulting your intelligence. The reality is, though, I think you're intelligent, and as I've told you before, I think it's awesome that you were a coal miner and decided to go pursue your intellectual potential. I do believe you have a different intellectual metabolism than mine. You like things more concrete. And I do think the grain of truth in missing abstractions is a certain kind of abstraction, right? A less technical abstraction. See, mathematical abstractions with all the technical definitions, I think they feel more concrete, a certain kind of intellectual metabolism, a certain way of thinking about knowledge can make it so that those abstractions are more natural than vague abstractions, which seem charlatanish. But they're not, and especially in my case where I'm saying we had an idea of induction, mathematicians made a technical use of it, and that technical use informs us on what the more general use is. It can improve it and tighten down. And it is also technical, but it's not the kind of technical where we're discussing the mathematical procedures of something. And so I have a video that's about the cool things of science, and for you to have gotten the abstractions involved, when you think I made a mistake or been sloppy, you would have to figure out, okay, how does that affect his argument in the video where he mentioned it? Does what he got wrong or imprecisely, does it change? And you even said I described induction well enough. I didn't mislead people. Before you could understand what you understand about Zeno's paradox, learning induction was on that step. I'm just claiming that was an important step you couldn't have done without, and you were intellectually dependent on that. Okay, I'm not saying which step of a mathematical procedure. So you kind of missed the boat from that perspective, and so in need of an insult because you're calling me a charlatan and maligning my character, not just my opinions or my ability to make sense, but of the data I've gotten, but just saying, oh, he probably doesn't even know what those are just words. Yeah, how would I search the internet and come up with these words that you find interesting too? Fourier train. No, I'm 44 years old, and since I was 8, I've been collecting these kinds of things. I mean, one of the earliest ones I remember, and why I say around 8 is because I think that must have been how old I was, but it might have been 5 or 6 actually, because I remember I was in 2nd grade, and my grandmother, who was a teacher, had given me a bunch of science worksheet kind of things and pamphlets of for 5th or 6th grade kids or something. And I was young. So how old are you in those things? Isn't it 7 in 2nd grade? So okay, I was 6 or 7. And it was about momentum, and it went into what people had thought momentum was, what it turned out that we think it is now, and so I've been collecting those. And yeah, I mean, the only things I've ever gone super deep into are logic and programming. Everything else, yeah, I just lightly try to get the gist of it. And when I took in-depth classes in college, I knew I'd forget a lot of the details of how to solve, the homework problems. And on the way out of that, before I'd forgotten all that, I did philosophical work when I was familiar with that stuff and tried to get the gist. Every once in a while I find out that my gist was wrong, or that science has accomplished something new, and I try to adjust those and get it more well informed. But I never claim more than that. I mean, if people ask, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a layman. That's what I say. On the other hand, for a philosopher, spreading out with political ideas and stuff, which you also have, I do have a pretty good general knowledge of the territory at the top level. What kinds of studies, like I've done fairly well of learning what kinds of studies people have, what kinds of research, and how they relate, which ones are trying to mimic the way physics is done, and which is more and more everybody in some sense, and how much do they succeed, and size those things up. None of that would make me an expert, in every field? No. Just have a placement. It's like knowing history a little bit, and at least some way stations. You can't know everything. Now, I am a skeptic, and I think the language is pitted against us. It's designed to put a frame, cognitive science frame, in a conversation. And so as I was discovering that I was a skeptic, I realized to say things precisely the way I believe, in the way a lot of people take language, I'd have to go, it seems to me. It appears to me that it seems to me that I am thinking that I felt it could even be an infinite regressive. Well, it appears to me that it appears to me. Okay, that's not acceptable. That puts, first of all, that's wasted words. And 2, it puts you in a framing like you're not sure. I'm sure. It's like this example I like to use. You got 2 guys standing in front of skyscrapers they've built. And you go up to one guy and you say, is that infinitely strong? And he goes, yeah, it can withstand infinite anything. And then you go to the other guy and he goes, well, no, it's not infinitely strong. It can withstand a 7.0 earthquake. Anything bigger probably knock it down. So you go into the building with the guy that says it's infinitely strong, because infinitely strong is better than it's just a 7.0. If you trust him, right? So if we're going to have a language that's based on the guys in front saying, I know this building's safe, which one really knows that? The guy that thinks it's infinitely strong doesn't really know how strong his building is. It might be stronger, it might be weaker. That lack of knowledge to me is an important difference. So I'm going to define knowing with reference to the guy that at least has some data, right? And I'm going to assume everything I say has, it appears to me that. And since I'm not going to put that in every sentence, I'll make sure people know I'm a skeptic in that when you tell me a sentence, you say, I know the sun is made of helium. Then I hear you saying, I think the sun is made of helium. Or, it appears to me the sun is made of helium. I insert that. Those are in all sentences. There is no absolute certainty. So why would we have a bunch of terms in our language based on absolute certainty? Why are we going to have a term? Nothing is really true. Why? To be true, you have to be absolutely, it's perfectly. So no statement is really true. What's the point of that? We don't actually know anything. We just pretend we know. No, if you make the relative definitions of certainty and everything else, and you define truth in terms of honesty to the facts, then that's why a truth could be wrong. Why? Because it was honest to the facts. You know? The cognitive science way is like, the truth is what people say is true is whatever conforms to their framework that they use to analyze the situation. So anyway, you have these two kinds of intellectual metabolisms, according to, like, Nietzsche was an example, and elsewhere in my own experience, but just paraphrasing my own idea of it. And like, there's a scholar and people that like to know and memorize and organize large bodies of facts, and then there's a more creative type who likes to know just a few key principles that they can use to generate their knowledge. And they're creative and they can go off in crazy directions. But the scholars can also be overly conservative. Generally, the creative people that are actually have their shit together and something to offer, like Einstein, you know, the scholarly types of their own generation generally reject them. But it's the next generation scholarly types that will adopt it, you know, after it's really proved itself, because they are smart and it's sort of a slower moving show me, takes more time, and also because they like to adopt a convention and be at their place in history and say, this is the state of affairs, this is how this thing works, I will get the gist of it and work from here. And that's fine. They have a harder time appreciating the creative types than vice versa, because the creative types, these other ones might look slow and conservative, but it's obvious the role they play. And I think it's easier for the creative type to see that, but who knows, they basically don't get along and don't appreciate each other as much as they should. It's like left and right half the brain at war instead of just complementarizing each other's skill set, complementing what they can contribute into a whole. So, yeah, I might point out in the future how Hythloday is missing the boat and misstepping, especially if he wants to make some sort of contest like that. I mean, I'm either going to ignore that kind of thing, or I'm going to reply in kind, so it'll probably come up again, and there'll be examples, and maybe, you know, if it's going to be games of gotcha, you know, a misstep can be just an accident of history that you have to endure if that's the kind of contest you're in. But yeah, for the record, I mean, no, I mean, obviously, I think he's intelligent. He just doesn't make links the way I consider a bit more brilliant between the things he's learned. Yeah. And even if somebody makes the links wrong, like if you wrongly think that induction is involved in how limits are defined, you know, as a dependency, even if I'm wrong, I still prefer people that make those kind of links. And so, because otherwise, how are we going to find the ones that are right? We need people that go, hey, here's a candidate, and then we judge the candidate. So, yeah, but I appreciate the other kind of metabolism, but, you know, I'm not going to take shit from it.